Hello everyone, welcome to JS Gigs and my name is Deepak. Here in this tutorial, we are going to be talking about setting up Firebase in your backend application, right? So all that while we have been seeing how PWA work in your modern web browser. All that while we have been seeing like how the push notification works, and we have also set up Firebase using the Angular Fire ng-add command in our Angular CLI. And this time around, in this particular video tutorial, we are going to be talking about how to add the Firebase support to your backend and also how to receive messages from the FCM to your web browser, right? During the course, we are also going to be seeing how exactly you can set up the Firebase. So there are essentially going to be three entities that we are going to be talking about. So let me just try to explain how it is going to really work. So now there are going to be three entities. So let me draw those three entities right here. Right, this is the first entity, this is the second entity, and this is a third entity. So one is going to be your web app, the other one is going to be your Node.js app, and then the other thing is Firebase, right? So your web application, which is essentially running in browser, the one which I've highlighted over here, and then this is a node application that you can run basically anywhere in the cloud or in your local or locally set up node utility. And the Firebase is again on the cloud, but this is something which is managed by Google. So let me just put a template over here. This is going to be Node.js utility or API. And then third one is going to be the Firebase, which is also basically called the Google Firebase or Google Cloud. How each one of these will communicate to one another, right? So by default, we have basically so far set up the web thing, which is over here. Like we had seen in the previous chapter and tutorial that we basically set up the Angular Firebase using the ng-add command. And now we are going to be building these two entities, which is the node utility, which is highlighted over here. And then the other thing is the Google Firebase node utility setup. Although we have created a Google Firebase account in the last video tutorial itself, but then we'll see that how really these two things would talk to one another, right? So what are their usage in a larger term, right? So now let's say this web app, right? So web app has certain things to be done, right? So let me just write it down here. Web application is going to be having some of the features, right? So what are those features? So web application, first of all, what we had achieved so far is basically we have added the Firebase using, then we are now going to be setting up public key that we will from Firebase. Third, we are also going to be generating a token, or rather the key. All right. So the third thing we would do from the web application is to basically receive a token. And this token needs to be saved in the backend or Node.js utility using which the Firebase would really generate a push notification to a particular web application, right? So what really happens is that the moment you register your Firebase web application and you provide a configuration that we have also seen in the app.config.ts, meaning the app ID, the token, and the other basic stuff. Along with that, we are also going to be making use of a public key, which is also known as VAPID. VAPID basically means Voluntary Application Server Identification, or we can also call it as VAPID in short. So VAPID is something which is given by the Firebase console, and then that's the ID that you will have to basically use in your web application to make a connection with your Firebase cloud, and that using that particular ID, we are going to be generating a token, and then we will see that how do we really generate a token using that particular ID. We will see in a short while from now. And using that ID will be saved basically in the Node.js utility, and using which Node.js utility will make a call to your Google Firebase, and Google Firebase will generate a push notification to your web app, right? So let me put this here. So this is what a web application would essentially do, right? Now let's just talk about the other entity, which is the Node.js utility. So Node.js utility, let me put a sticky note here. So note, please note that the moment we start closing down all of these action items that I'm writing it down on the sticky notes over here on your screen right now, I'll try to close them, or I'll try to different color code them, and we will see each one of it in a moment, right? So let me also put this here, or rather, let me put all of these here, right? So your Node.js utility will basically house generated by your web application. And once you generate a particular key, this key will be saved and stored here. We are also going to be making use of some of the Firebase SDK. Firebase SDK for the backend, and token received in the we are going to be basically integrating the Firebase SDK for backend. And when you integrate this Firebase SDK in the backend, we are also going to be providing a registration token or a key that we have received in the step 1 or in the web application to the Firebase messaging. Okay, so integrate Firebase SDK with for backend, and then we are also in this particular case, we are also going to be sending the key to Firebase to initiate the push notification, right? So this is the activity which it would do, right? So if I were to draw things here, so your web application is going to be, right? So first of all, your web application will send the generated key to your Node.js utility, and then Node.js utility will essentially make a call to your Firebase, right? And then once a call to the Firebase is made, that's when Firebase would really generate a push message and send it to your application. So that is how it is going to be. This is going to be a triangle shape. So let me repeat once again for you. Web application is going to be generating basically a key using a VAPID, using the Firebase SDK that we have integrated in the previous chapter. And that generated key would be sent to your Node.js utility, that using that, it will initiate a push. It will initiate a task for your Firebase, or it will notify your Firebase account to basically send a push notification to your web application. So this is how it is going to be. And what is the work of a Firebase, Google Firebase? So it basically provides few things. So firstly, it is going to be providing a public key or the UI application that we have seen over here. And then it also provides config for UI and backend / Node.js UTL utility. And then it also stores information about the messages, FCM. And also, we really cannot see the messages. However, we can see the number of messages that are being sent from the Node.js utility. So Firebase, you cannot really see what messages were sent, but then you can certainly see the number. And that's what also we would see in a moment when we reach, when we try to do this bit in our Firebase, right? So this is how it is going to be, right? I hope this is pretty much clear for now. And then let's just start doing that from the web application first. So we have done the first step already, meaning we had integrated the Firebase in the last episode itself. So let me mark this done. So let me mark this done. So this bit is done. Now let's just look at the second one, which is public key that we will receive from Firebase, which is VAPID, and that's what something we need to really set up. So how do we set up? Let's just quickly go to the Firebase console, or let me open another browser tab over here. console.firebase.com, firebase.google.com. It'll take a moment and then it'll open the website. And from there, we will try to see how we can really take a public key and store that in the UI application. Right, so come here. So there are two applications over here. Students Details PWA is the application that we are building along the way. So let me click on it. It'll take a moment and it'll open. And then we will quickly go down to cloud messaging. And then in the cloud messaging, also need to open the project setting. Here in the project setting, if you come down here in the cloud messaging, you need to come down and you click on generate a key pair. You click on it, you generate a key pair, and this is the public key that you will basically have to use. Right. So this public key will now go to the Firebase UI application, and using this public key, a UI will basically generate another, and this is a VAPID. This is the public key that needs to go into the Firebase UI application. I have copied this, and now let me take you to the VS Code. Here in the VS Code, let me open the SRC, and here let me write down this logic at the app component level itself, right? So in order to generate the private key which is used for notification, which will be used in the Node.js utility, I will first of all have to get that, right? So how do we get that? So as we have seen on our web page, I've copied a token that will be basically used in my UI web application in order to receive the key which I'll be storing in the Node.js utility, right? But before that, let me just quickly import all the necessary libraries and methods which are required to basically set up the Firebase, right? So in order to do so, let me just quickly import these dependencies. So I'm going to be basically making an import from Angular /fire/ messaging, right? And the three methods that I'm going to be making use of is get token. The other one is get messaging. The third one is the messaging, right? Let me now come down to ng on init. So I'm going to be writing logic in the ng on init, and I see that it is going to be a little bloated if I continue to write it here. So let me divide this and let me create smaller function for ng init, right? So first of all, I'm going to be writing subscribe to push. And I'm basically going to be putting entire thing here. And this is going to be of type void. And I'm going to be putting it like this dot subscribe to push, right? The next method I'm going to be making is the request permission. And after requesting the permission, I'm going to be basically initiating the token from the Firebase, right? Initiating request permission, and inside the request permission, I'm basically going to be initiating the Firebase registration and process to receive a token that will be used in the Node.js or a server utility, as we had seen in the browser, right? So to write that, I first of all will have to write this. Let's say the name of the function is going to be permission, right? And then I'll come down here. I will try to register the token. I will try to register and get the token. And before that, let me just write down the code that is required to get the key which will be used in the Node.js utility. So to get that, we are going to be writing the entire logic in a try catch. So let me put that logic over here. So what it essentially going to do is that it will, right? So now since these are await, so I'll have to make this function as async. So now things are set. Only thing is I need to get the messaging thing over here. So in order to get the messaging object, I had previously imported a get messaging method from the Angular Firebase. So let me write it down like this: const messaging get messaging, right? And then this particular key is the VAP ID, which I have basically copied from my Firebase. So where did I copy it from? So let me quickly show that to you once again. So let me take you to the Chrome, and here in the Chrome, you can see that this is the public key that I'm going to be making a use of in my web application. There is another request that I want to make to you all of you. All these tokens and all, I am not going to be hiding it, but ensure that the moment this application I finish this tutorial or a video series, I'm going to be disabling this application. So please don't try to hack it, and don't try to misuse it, because it's not really going to be useful for you. By the time you see this tutorial, chances are that this application has already been removed from my Firebase console. So don't try to misuse it. Try to put your energy and brains into the more useful things. Don't try to hack it, right? So just an advice. Now let me quickly take you back to VS Code, and it's essentially the same token which I have copied it over here, right? So this is also called VAPID, right? So VAPID we had also seen in the previous tutorial what it really means as per the Firebase documentation. So VAPID essentially means Voluntary Application Server Identification, or VAPID. That's exactly which I have noted here, right? So now you know where to take the VAPID from, and once you have done all of this, you are basically ready to go. So the token which I'm going to be receiving after calling the get token method of Angular Firebase, it's basically going to be returning a token. It is going to be returning a token. That's the token that I'll have to use in the Node.js utility. So let me build this application again. And by running the npm run build command, it'll take a moment. And then once it builds the application, we'll quickly go to the browser and try to refresh and bring back the result and see that if our Firebase registration is proper and we are able to receive the token that we are basically trying to see. And also at the line number 57, you may have noticed that I'm writing and printing the token in the console log. All right, so now you can see that the application has been built successfully, and now we will quickly go to the Chrome browser and try to see if the application works properly or not. So the application is over here. Let me unregister this and then do a refresh. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening in all that while. And if you're not really subscribed to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe and also hit the bell icon in case if I post the next video, you would be notified. So thank you very much once again for listening in. I'll see you in the next one.